What's up you guys? In today's video I'm going to be talking about how cool these fox earrings are. No, not actually. I'm going to be talking about the Dominant Diminished scale and a bunch of different applications that you can get from that specific scale. Before I get onto that, I want to invite you guys over to my Patreon account where you can find some of the different notations to some of my lessons here on YouTube. You can also find different scale diagrams I'm going to be talking about on this specific lesson, and also the backing track that I used right at the beginning of the video, so you can jam the Dominant Diminished scale all across the neck, all over, just wherever you really want to play it. Now, coming back to the actual lesson, I'm going to be talking about the Dominant Diminished scale. Now, some people like to look at this scale as the mode of the actual diminished scale. And this is the type of diminished scale that you would play over a dominant type of chord. Why is that? Well, let's get on to the actual intervallic construction of the scale. Now, the intervallic construction has the 1, a flat 2, a sharp 2. Yes, it has two different 2s. It has a natural third, or major third actually. It has a sharp 4, or you can look at it as a flat 5. It has a 5, a 6, or you can look at it as a double flat 7 or a diminished 7th. Yes, we're talking about a diminished scale, so it's cool to look at it as a double flat 7. And we also have a flat 7. Now, if you look at the actual construction, you can tell that you have a 1, a 3, a 5, and a flat 7. And that combination of notes is actually what constructs a dominant chord. And that's exactly why you can play a dominant diminished scale over a dominant type of chord. Now, if you notice, there's also a diminished chord. How do we look at this? How do we find this diminished chord within the actual scale? We have a 1, a sharp 2, which can be looked at as a flat 3. You have a sharp 4, which can be looked at as a flat 5. And you have that 6, which can be looked at as a double flat 7. So essentially, you have a diminished type of arpeggio stemming from the root of the actual scale. And when we look at it in terms as a relative to the normal diminished scale, the normal diminished scale actually stems from the flat 2 degree of the dominant diminished scale. We have this pretty cool type of move where you have a diminished arpeggio or diminished 7th arpeggio stemming from the root of the scale, and you also have a diminished arpeggio stemming from the flat 2. And that's going to be one of the first type of fingerings that I'm going to show you guys for this scale. And this actually sounds pretty cool. It's going to look something like this. It's a pretty cool application where you get two completely different diminished types of arpeggios. That's pretty cool. You can apply all different types of techniques to those different arpeggios. You can come up with some pretty cool lines. Now, the first type of actual scale phrasing or scale fingering that I'm going to be talking about is just by looking at it specifically as if it were a mode of the diminished scale. So what we would do is just go up a half step from the root and play the diminished scale from that. Now, the diminished scale, and both the diminished scale and the dominant diminished scale, are symmetrical scales. What this means is that you get a very symmetrical type of construction. In terms of the dominant diminished scale, you get a construction where it's based on a half step and then a whole step, a half step and a whole step, a half step and a whole step, all the way from the root to the octave, and that's why it's called a symmetrical type of a scale. Now, what this results in is the intervallic construction that we already talked about before. But when we look at it in the actual fretboard, it's going to give us some very symmetrical types of scales or scale diagrams. Cool thing about this is that you learn one, and then you just move across the neck up in minor thirds, and you can apply the same type of scale position. So let's begin with the diminished type of approach, and it's going to look like this. For that, I'm just mainly thinking about the C diminished scale, which it's pretty much a specific pattern that repeats all across the neck. Let me show it to you guys once more. notice it's pretty much the same type of pattern repeating over and over and over again. Now the next actual pattern I'm going to show you guys stems right from the root of the actual scale. It's going to go something like this. That one is a little bit more complicated in terms of actually being able to visualize it, but it's pretty cool because it gives you a couple of different ways where you can play the actual scale. Now let me show you what I was talking about before, where you can just move the scale up in minor thirds. I'm going to go back to the same type of diminished type of approach. I'm going to show you exactly what I mean by moving it up in minor thirds. In terms of the guitar, it just means you go up 3 frets. So you're in C, 1, 2, 3, and then you would just play the same type of fingering up from E flat. It's gonna look something like this. If you notice, I'm just playing the same exact type of fingering and just moving across the fretboard in a minor third. And now the final type of specific diagram that I'm going to show you guys is a 4-note per string type of approach. It's a pretty cool approach because you get this specific fingering, and you just take that specific fingering, you move it up a string and up a fret, all across in this position or this direction of the scale. It's gonna look like this. Now it's very important that I let you guys know that when you get to the second string, as with all other types of scales, you're gonna have to move an extra fret because of the nature of the guitar, the nature of the tuning of the guitar. And then once you come back, you just do that once more. Now, you already have all these different fingerings. Where do you play this scale? Like I mentioned before, it's over a type of dominant chord. But if you have any of the extensions or the alterations that come with this scale, like the flat 9, the sharp 9, flat 5, or sharp 11, whatever you want to call it, then it might sound a little bit more inside. It's not going to sound too odd against the actual chords. So that's going to help a little bit. All right, so that's it for this video. I want to remind you guys that you can follow me on any type of social media. I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm also on Patreon, like I mentioned before. I want to give a huge shout out and huge thanks to the guys over at Patreon for actually contributing to the channel. It's a lot easier to create free content like this when you have people helping you out. I also want to invite you guys over to my website, juanantoniomusic.com. If you're interested in private lessons, you can find different lesson packs there that you could purchase and take lessons through Skype. You can also find my book, The Art of Scale Weaving, and my 2 different box sets with the guys from Guitar Tutorials. All right, thanks for watching.